good morning. I hope that you're all well. I don't know if you can hear the wind in the background. Could you hear that? The storm that hit the UK on Friday, it's still blowing down here. Not as bad as it was on Friday. Friday was something else. We've been in this house where we've had some really major storms. In fact, I have literally been lifted up and carried in the air, and I actually broke some ribs when the wind dropped me and dashed me down against a wall. It wasn't as bad as that, but it was still a really bad storm. We lost a tree in our garden, and it's such a shame to see, you know, a tree that's sort of around about probably 100 years old come down. We've got a lot of clearing up to do in this garden. We had a big clear up day yesterday, but the wind has picked back up, so all that work was for nothing. But you know, you have to do positive things. This week I've done very little stitching. I have been wiped out. Whatever has been going on the last couple of weeks, my energy levels are absolutely zilch. So I really haven't had much time to stitch at all. Although last night I felt as if I wanted to stitch and I had some energy to stitch. And one of the things that I wanted to do before I start my journey to the States was sort out my travel project, because the thought of going away and not having anything to stitch, you know, can't have that. So I decided on my project was going to be A. Robson, and I had charted her, and I decided on my fabric, and it was a toss-up between two. So I picked my colours, and these are the two colours for A. Robson, and I put in some test stitches on both of the linens, and the one I decided to go for was Tabby Cat Woodsmoke, which is the same linen as Mrs. Campbell was stitched on, and it worked out quite nicely actually, because I had an offcut from Mrs. Campbell that was just the right size as well. Now, because I'm stitching on 56 count, and on a plain, even though I've got my mighty bright light to attach to my hoop, sometimes the light is not enough to see on 56 count. It's very easy on 56 count to maybe put a stitch over 3 threads, or, you know, just miscount slightly. And this is one of the reasons, now I'm gonna digress now, but it's a good point I'm going to make. When we're charting samplers, you often see the girls have gone over 3 when they're stitching over 2, and I believe it's when the girls couldn't see properly. You know, maybe they were working on a count of linen that was a little bit above their eyesight, or maybe on that particular stitching session they didn't have very good light, so they misjudged the placement of their stitch. And that's the conclusion I have come to as I've started to go higher and higher in the counts of linen that I stitch in. I've found that if ever a border doesn't meet up, it's because I've probably gone over 3 somewhere when it should have been over 2. Very easy to do on a very high count of fabric. So going back to my travel project, I wanted to get my border in because it would give me good cross references to fill in the rest of the sampler. So last night I decided to do it, and it's such a small little sampler and such a pleasant border to stitch. Before I knew it, I had stitched the entire border, and it met up first time. And of course, I was going to put it away once the border had met up, but I couldn't. I thought, oh, let's get a little bit of green in. So I started to add some of the embellishments to the border. This must now go away. Otherwise, what will happen, I would have finished this before I even go, and then I'll have to find another one. So this is my travel project, and it's a perfect size for this hoop. So this is the hoop I'm going to take with me. For most of the time I'm going to be stitching on this sampler, but I will pop, I don't know if you remember in my last video I had that small little hoop. I will pop that in my handbag for stitching on the plane. I might have enough space on the plane, I can use my bigger one. We shall see. Anyway, so I'm all set for travelling with my stitching project. All I need now is a negative COVID test to get on the plane. We went out Wednesday night, we went to the quiz at the golf club with Mark and Sue, and we had a wonderful time. I wore my mask the whole time, and it was probably the longest period that I'd had a mask on. And do you know, I've got all these like little, dare I say the word, spots. I'm too old to have spots, but I've had this little rash come up on my cheek, and I'm sure that was from wearing the mask. But I'm trying to take every precaution possible not to come down with COVID before I fly. Today's my birthday, and normally we would go out for lunch and, you know, maybe get together with some friends and celebrate. But this year we're not doing that. I just feel I don't want to take any chances at all of getting COVID before I fly. So what we're going to do after I finish this video, Ray and I are going to take the dogs out for a walk, and then we're going to come home and have a nice meal, just the two of us in the house, to celebrate. Although when you're 59, that isn't really a lot to celebrate. Although I suppose one should be grateful, you know, to live to 59. So many of the girls that stitch these samplers that we all love so much, you know, many of them didn't sort of reach adulthood, or, you know, died early in childbirth, or died of an illness before, you know, they got anywhere close to my age. Talking of ages and birthdays, today's the day that we announce the winner for this shaker box, and I will get to that shortly. But I'm trying to do things in an order that's in my brain. Although if I said to Ray there was order in my brain, he would laugh. Anyway, Mary Wigglesworth. Now, Mary was 58 years of age when she stitched her sampler in 1812, and when I saw that she was 58, I felt that this sampler I wanted to reproduce and stitch myself in my 58th year. So I really wanted to release her before I hit 59. So I had intended to release her yesterday, but when the storm came in so badly, I was afraid that we would lose power and I would be without any internet, so I couldn't release her. So I released it on Friday whilst we had power. She is a fabulous sampler. Look at those rich, vibrant colours. she a beautiful sampler? She really, really is. When I was stitching this sampler, I had this wonderful warm feeling inside me, and when I was charting her, I could feel Mary's spirit was still in her sampler, and there was a beautiful warmth, a glow that was sort of coming off the sampler. You could really feel it, and I found great sort of inner peace when I was working on Mary. I think that Mary herself must have been a very warm-hearted and contented person, because you know that emanates from her needlework. There's a great maturity about this sampler. You know, you can feel that, and maybe it's because, you know, she was 58 when she stitched her sampler. Now, Wigglesworth was Mary's first married name. She was married twice. Her maiden name, she was born Mary Holmes, and the reason we know she was 58 is because she stitched AET 58 on her sampler. Now, AET is an abbreviation of a Latin word, and I shall spell this for you. AETATIS. And the word means at the age of, and you often see AET on gravestones. You always learn something. I knew that, but I originally learned that from another sampler many years ago. Samplers for me have really broadened my general knowledge. Now, Mary was born in 1754 on February the 24th. It's her birthday in the days ahead. She was from Yorkshire, and she married William Wigglesworth, and the Holmeses and the Wigglesworth had intermarried through the generations. So there was, you know, it was cousins marrying cousins, and second cousins and third cousins. William died, and she married in 1814, 2 years after she stitched this sampler, Anthony Smith. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Let me start again. I got that wrong. William died in 1814, and 2 years after she stitched this sampler, and she married Andrew Smith the year after in 1815. That was very close to her husband's death, wasn't it? Anyway, we know Mary was an educated person because on her marriage, on the entry in the parish records for her marriage to Anthony Smith, she signed it in a very fine hand. And I think that Mary was a needlework teacher, just like Mrs. Campbell. And that was why she stitched this sampler when she was 58. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the sampler. Mary only used 12 colours, and it's amazing how this sampler is very much about richness of colour, and it goes to show the effect that you can create with not a huge number of colours. I stitched the model with Auvera Soie 103, but in the booklet you've got the conversion for Soie d'Alger and for DMC. And on the website, on Mary Wigglesworth page, underneath the thumbnail photographs, you have a row of tabs, and one of those is Thread Legend. If you go into that, we have broken down the quantities of threads between, we cover 46 count, 40 count, 36 count and 28 count using 1 or 2 strands. So it doesn't matter what you're going to stitch Mary on, you can work out your thread quantities from there. Mary stitched her sampler in cross stitch over 2, with the exception of one word, and that was the word heart. And we are sort of categorising this sampler that it is suitable for stitching on Aida, even though it's got that one word heart in over 1. You could stitch the word in backstitch, or you could do something else. And if this wasn't a model, I would have done that or this on the sampler. I would replace the word heart, which she had to squidge in, with a little red cross-stitch heart. If you look at that row of tabs under the thumbnail photographs, you'll see stitch guide. And in that stitch guide, I have included a little graph of a tiny little heart that uses just a couple of cross stitches over 2 that you could replace the word heart with. Gosh, isn't that sampler gorgeous? This creme brulee linen really showcases this sampler so well. Really pleased with this sampler. Now, this band across the top is very reminiscent of band samplers and Scottish band samplers. Now, Mary was in Yorkshire, which is one of the northern counties, so there's going to be some influence in the border counties, you know, the crossover between Scottish and English samplers. And I think that Mary may have stitched this band or something very similar when she was a child stitching her schoolgirl sampler. And in fact, the sampler is quite sort of reminiscent of bands. You know, there's 3 definite sections. I love that name, Wigglesworth. It comes off the tongue so nicely. Wigglesworth is actually a village in Yorkshire, and you know my friend Sue, she's worked in Wigglesworth, and obviously Mary's family would have originally come from Wigglesworth. Such a beautiful, beautiful sampler. I'm not hanging this sampler on a wall. I am, in my study, we've got 2 massive, really, you know, almost floor to ceiling windows, and the window is probably just about that far off the ground, and there's 2 great big long windowsills. I'm now filling those windowsills with samplers, when I'm picking my frames, I'm thinking of frames that I can place on a surface without having to use an easel, and this frame is very good for that. That, you know, that is relatively stable. I use the same frame for Mary's Snow, and I can just place Mary on a surface, and Mrs. Campbell is just the same. Now, this series of rooms, I have never put needlework in. It's not really suitable for hanging on the walls here because the way the light actually does flood into this room. But we have a sideboard in the far corner of the billiards room that doesn't get direct sunlight, and I have put Mrs. Campbell on that sideboard because these colours in her sampler really pick up the colours in this room. So this is the very first sampler to be in this section of the house. And going back to frames and ways of displaying them. See, even this frame will just stand up by itself. So I can actually put the rose and the giant pear on a surface. I have lots of sideboards in the house, and I've also got in my breakfast room a great big huge dresser, and I'm going to sort of display a lot of my samplers on the dresser, and I'm going to go for frames where the samplers will stand up by themselves. I've been asked about the easel that you see in the photographs of our samplers, and this easel, it's not the actual one, but it's very similar. The easel that you see in the photographs belongs to the photographer, and it's one of his props that he uses for studio photo shoot sessions. But this easel I bought off Etsy, and you can get it in all sorts of sizes. I've got a very small one, and I've got a bigger one that I've actually got season and time on. So these come from Etsy, and they're not very expensive. They haven't tarnished yet, but you know, they're not proper brass. Mind you, who wants proper brass when you've got to clean it? All our doorknobs and catches on the window are brass. And oh my God, we go through a lot of brasso in this house, keeping them clean. I've got memories of the past down today, because I love looking at this sampler. It's so beautiful. I exchanged a series of emails with somebody last night about memories, and the mutual thought we both had about memories was how she reminded us of Moira Blackburn's work. And Moira Blackburn was my inspiration. She was the person who inspired me to pick up my needle, and I fell head over heels in love with reproduction samplers. And I have got a wall of samplers of Moira Blackburn, and they're my very early pieces. So I've got down today to show you, to every season, so to everything there is a season and time. And this sampler is and will be forever popular. I think many of us have stitched this sampler. I also have this sampler reglazed with non-reflective glass. So beautiful. Now, this sampler was stitched on Aida, and it was stitched with DMC. And the Aida I used for this was 20 count Aida, which is equivalent to 40 count linen. Just put that down. It's a very heavy frame, that one. Now, it's a funny thing. When I started or discovered linen and switched from Aida to linen, I think that I had a fit when I saw 36 count linen. I actually had a fit when I saw 32 count linen. But it's funny, you psych yourself out of something. Because if you think about it, if you can stitch on 20 count Aida, which is 40 count linen, why can't you stitch on 40 count linen? And it's all about seeing the holes and your own personal fear of working on that fabric. The first few stitches you put in on a blank piece of linen are always going to be the ones that you have to really stop and look and get your bearings with those holes. But once you've got a couple of stitches in, the next few stitches are easier, and before you know it, your eyes have adjusted to the size and type of fabric that you're stitching on. So never be afraid to try. If you don't try, you won't succeed. Okay, now DMC. I was, this morning I popped onto Facebook and I saw a post about whether to use DMC or silk for one of our samplers. It doesn't matter what you stitch a sampler with or what you stitch it on. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful because it's your handiwork and it's something that you have put your energy and your love into. It really doesn't matter what you stitch your samplers with. DMC. What would we do without DMC in the cross stitch world? It's our staple. Now I haven't put this up because I didn't have room, but this is a beautiful sampler. Oh, well, it's not a sampler, it's a black work piece. And this, I don't know if it's coming across, has a beautiful shine to it. You'd be hard pushed to tell whether that was stitched with silk or with DMC. It was stitched with DMC, I believe. I enjoyed creating that, and that actually won many Best in Show awards in the year that I stitched it. I was quite surprised actually. So the fact that it was stitched in DMC does not detract from the sampler. The DMC is beautiful in that piece of needlework. If you like stitching with DMC, or that's what your budget dictates, use DMC and use it with pride. Always be proud of your needlework and display your needlework. There's, if you don't frame your needlework, there's many other things that you can do with it. I love seeing when people turn their needlework into little pin cushions or pillows to have on a chair. A pillow doesn't have to be big. You can have little pillows. You can have pillows of all shapes, and it's beautiful to display your needlework in your home. Needlework is what makes your house a home, your home. Gosh, I'm going on now, but never be worried about using DMC. There shouldn't even be a discussion about it. You should be able to use what you want to use, and I can't put it into words, but use DMC if you want to use DMC. Although we use silk, and I sort of just, in my mind, I design in silk, I do spend a lot of time matching the DMC to the original sampler so that you can stitch that sampler with DMC. There was a conversation about a lady who really wanted to try silk, but she was worried about spending a lot of money, then not liking it. A little simple all red sampler such as Ruth Gibb. All you need is one skein of Overa Soie d'Alger or one spool of Overa Soie 103. That won't break the bank. You can use that, try Ruth Gibb with one spool or one skein, and if you like it, you know that silk is for you. The other thing is, we all have to think about our pennies when we're kitting up projects. The first time that I ever used silk for a sampler, I had to buy all the colours because I didn't have any. But as I carried on stitching and my stash built up, all of a sudden it wasn't as expensive because I could use like a partial skein I had left over from a previous project. But what I also found was that if the sampler called for a pale lemon, I may not have had the exact number, but I had a colour that was very, very close, so I could use that. And each time the project became less expensive because I wasn't having to buy all the materials. Anyway, that's just a bit of a ramble off the subject of Mary Wigglesworth. Let's go back to Mary. Mary's stitch count is 249 stitches by 249 stitches. It's a square sampler. But neither the original nor the model is square, and that's because Zweigart 56 count fabric is not even. So this is why you get a slight distortion of the sampler, and the linen that Mary stitched her sampler on was uneven, and it was 33/30 count. And that's why the 33 narrowed the sampler and elongated it. So when I stitched Mary, I did a little test of my linen to get it in the right orientation. And the way you do that is you stitch out an L, under 2 over 2, under 2 over 2. Then you turn the corner and do the same. And you stitch enough both sides to go over the inch, and then you count how many stitches you have made, and that will give you the stitch count of your fabric. So what you need to do with your linen for Mary, if it is uneven, is the higher count goes on the horizontal, because the higher the count, the more cross stitches you can fit into the inch, so it contracts. The lower stitch count means that you can't fit as many stitches in, so it elongates it. So if you want it in this proportion, what's the word? I think maybe this sort of proportion, although you're going to correct me and tell me that's the wrong word. If you want it narrower and longer, do it that way, and that will replicate what Mary did. What else can I tell you about Mary? Not a lot, other than she is available on our website as a printed booklet and as a PDF download, and she is available from needlework stores around the world. Now, her booklets only arrived at the end of this week. There were all sorts of hold-ups printing her and hold-ups delivering her. So no stores have actually received the booklets yet. But they are all on their way. But that does not stop you approaching your store and placing an order with them, or asking them to get the chart in from distributors or from us. Enjoy her, and you know, don't forget to share your photographs of your progress and your finished Marys with us. This week there have been some fabulous finishes posted on social media of hats projects, and it's just been such a delight to see them. A couple of days this week I have just been curled up on the sofa like a wet rag, and you know, popping onto social media and seeing those have been a highlight of my day. Now for the draw for the shaker box. I forgot to get Lucy Barber. Let me just go and get her a moment and I'll be straight back. Birthday giveaway prize is this shaker needlework box. I like to give a gift on my birthday. I suppose to receive a gift. I've always been the same way. We've got some visitors. They snuck in as Mummy rushed out to get this and rushed back. The question for the giveaway was how many cross stitches over 2 is in Lucy Barber. Now, I didn't know the answer, but last night, did you know the answer? Last night I went on to the computer program and looked, and in my mind, I thought that there would be around about 30,000 cross stitches, but I was wrong. The exact number of stitches in Lucy Barber is 25,775. So I started to go through all the entries, and there were a lot of entries, and somebody got sort of like within about 100. I thought, oh gosh, they're going to be the winner. And then somebody got within 50 odd. I thought, oh, that's the winner. And when I got to the end, unbelievably, somebody had got to within 11 of the number, and that person's guess was 25,764. That is an amazing guess, and that person was Kendra Sauder. So congratulations, Kendra, you have won the Quaker sewing box. I'm saying Quaker, I mean to say shaker, is because Bertie's on top of me, distracted me. So Kendra, if you would email me your name and your address, and if you could include a telephone number as well for the courier, I will pack up your shaker sewing box and get that sent to you. And if you could contact me sooner rather than later, because I've only got a couple of days ahead before I travel up to London for a couple of days before I fly to Nashville. Talking about Nashville, I've had several people ask me, am I releasing any samplers for Nashville? Hugo, what are you crying for? You shouldn't be in here. No, I haven't got any Nashville releases. I haven't got a sales room in Nashville this year. I'm going over to Nashville with a friend for a little bit of a holiday. I'm going to be giving a talk to a group of ladies whilst I'm there, and you know, predominantly I'm going to spend some time with Melissa and Deborah. We've got so many fun things lined up to do. We're going to pop into market on the Saturday. We might pop back on the Sunday if we didn't manage to do all the shopping that we wanted to do. But no, we're not releasing anything for Nashville this year. And also, I know that many of you are really anxious about stitching Lucy. I can understand why. She is just a fabulous, fabulous sampler. But I just haven't got round to putting together her booklet yet. We've got so many models. Bertie, get down, sweetheart. We've got so many models waiting to release, and I'm going through them as I can. But you know, sometimes you just have to be in the mind space where you're connecting to the little girls when you're putting together their lives. Now, I had an email. In fact, I've had a few emails about this, and this particular email says, I've just read an interesting article in an old issue of Sampler and Antique Needlework Quarterly. The article is written by a lady who collects antique samplers. She says that with the influx of reproduction samplers and stitchers who want to stitch the sampler exactly how the original was stitched, including putting the original stitcher's date and name on it, is concerning. She feels that it's okay to stitch the sampler, but we should now be putting our own name / date on it, or at least put our own name / date somewhere on the sampler so that in the future it will not be confused with an original and the authenticity of the sampler. I think it is a bit of a conundrum. We want to stitch to honour the original stitcher, and yet we should stitch for ourselves and not confuse future sampler collectors. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Well, if you've come to one of my workshops, this is something that I always talk about because it's something that I do feel strongly about, that we should personalise our samplers and put something on there that indicates, you know, when the sampler was stitched. Honestly, so many people have got caught buying samplers thinking they're originals and they're not, they're reproductions. I do think that is a good idea, and very often on the Hands Across the Sea samplers models you will see personalisations by model stitchers, whether they've added their own initials. I have one of my model stitchers that she adds bees to her samplers, which is like her way of signing the sampler. So, you know, it is a very good idea to mark that sampler in a visible way so that people can tell that it is not an original sampler. Honestly, a few years back, I saw a very respected dealer of samplers post a picture of a sampler as an original sampler, and I knew it wasn't because I actually owned the original sampler. And when I corresponded with that person and sent them a photograph of my sampler, and they sent me a photograph of their sampler, when you looked at it closely, you could tell that their sampler was a reproduction. So even experienced people can get caught. And the other thing you've got to watch out about is prints being sold as samplers. Some of these prints, when they're behind glass, they really do look authentic. So always be careful. Okay, I think that is about it for this week. These little boys, they want to go out for their walk. We can't do our normal Sunday walk on the cliffs because we would be blown over, and we don't want to walk where there are lots of trees because there have been so many trees that have come down. So we're off inland, and we're going to walk around a beautiful lake today. So it's a lovely walk where the dogs can be off the lead. They love being off the lead, and they're so well behaved. We're really, really lucky because both of the boys are totally non-reactive. They're very placid dogs, and they're good with children, good with other dogs. So it's really lovely that you can walk with them off the lead. Okay. Oh, and thank you everybody for my birthday wishes. I've been overwhelmed with the flowers and the gifts and the cards and the emails and the messages that have been sent. It's wonderful, and thank you so much. I'm always blown away by the warmth of your friendship. I'm not sure if I will be making a floss tube next Sunday. I will if I can, but I may just not be able to next Sunday because of my travel plans. But if I don't, I will be doing some videos whilst I am with Linda and whilst we're travelling and whilst we're in Nashville. So you will probably be fed up with the number of videos I post when I'm away. And when we're at market, I hope to share some videos from market so that you can experience what it's like to be there. Okay, enjoy Mary. She is a beautiful sampler. She's my birthday sampler this year. 59. Or somebody pointed out to me, when you have your 59th birthday, you are entering your 60th decade. Oh, your 60th year, sorry, not decade. Where do the years go? I hope I've got lots of years left because there are so many samplers that I want to stitch. Okay, stay safe, stay well. Bye-bye.